I trusted my colleague with everything, and when I discovered her secret betrayal, it shattered not just our friendship but my entire career path. I never imagined that someone I spent 8 hours a day with, someone I laughed with, celebrated milestones with, and confided in, could be capable of total deception. Her name is Laura, and she joined our marketing team 2 years ago, a whirlwind of charm, efficiency, and warmth that made everyone gravitate toward her. From the moment she arrived, she had this magnetic presence that made you forget your own insecurities. I considered her a friend almost immediately, the type of friend who knows your lunch preference, notices when you're stressed, and can turn a gloomy Monday into something bearable. That's why the betrayal hit like a lightning strike I never saw coming. It started with small things, subtle, barely noticeable at first. Laura would casually forget to include me in certain emails, only for me to find out later that she had rerouted critical project information to others without my knowledge. I chalked it up to oversight initially, telling myself, she's human, mistakes happen. But the unease in my stomach refused to dissipate. There were whispered conversations across the office floor, fleeting glances, and cryptic messages that would vanish if I dared look closer. A gnawing suspicion began to take root. Something wasn't right, and I had to uncover it before it consumed me completely. Then came the day I discovered the folder. It wasn't locked, but it seemed meant to be hidden, a forgotten USB drive labeled with a project name I didn't recognize. My curiosity, combined with a creeping sense of dread, pushed me to open it. Inside were documents, drafts, and spreadsheets detailing not just her projects but mine. Someone had been tracking my work, copying strategies, and subtly sabotaging progress while presenting it as collaboration. My heart raced. Every late night I spent perfecting slides, analyzing metrics, and crafting campaign strategies now felt like wasted effort because someone I trusted had been building an invisible advantage over me. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. There were emails she'd sent under my name to clients, meetings she scheduled that excluded me, and notes I didn't write that somehow landed in my personal folders. It wasn't a simple case of professional rivalry. It was personal, malicious, and meticulous. Laura had spent months, maybe even longer, undermining my work and reputation while maintaining the facade of the perfect colleague, the loyal friend. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the glowing screen, heart hammering, realizing that every smile, every joke, every casual conversation with her had been a carefully constructed illusion. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's just ambition, I muttered under my breath. Maybe she's stressed or misunderstood. But logic didn't soften the sting of being manipulated by someone I trusted implicitly. The office, once a place of camaraderie and collaboration, now felt like a minefield. Every interaction could conceal deceit. Every casual chat might mask a hidden agenda. And worst of all, I realized that confronting her directly could either blow up everything or force her into even more cunning deception. Over the next few days, I became hyper-aware of every move she made. I logged emails, checked sent folders, and cross-referenced project notes. It was exhausting, draining, and horrifyingly eye-opening. Each discovery chipped away at the person I thought I knew, leaving behind fragments of a trust I wasn't sure could ever be rebuilt. And yet, amid the panic and anger, there was a strange clarity. I could no longer allow myself to be passive. I had to choose: fight to expose the truth, or retreat quietly and protect what remained of my professional life. Then, one afternoon, the tipping point arrived. Laura invited me to lunch, smiling as though nothing had shifted between us. I sat across from her, my stomach a knot of tension, my mind racing with every revelation, every betrayal I had unearthed. She sipped her coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing across from her. I clenched my hands, gripping the edge of the table, and realized that the confrontation I had dreaded for weeks was inevitable. I had to know why she did this, why she targeted me specifically, and whether I could ever salvage the remnants of trust I had left. It was in that moment, with the bustling cafe around us, that I truly understood how betrayal works. It doesn't arrive as a thunderclap. It seeps in, insidious and quiet, altering every interaction, reshaping your perception of reality, and leaving you questioning not only the other person but yourself. How did I not see the signs? How did I ignore the tiny inconsistencies, the moments of hesitation, the subtle power plays? And most importantly, what would happen when I finally forced her to reveal the truth she had spent so long concealing? Lunch with Laura was surreal. She arrived with her usual bright smile, a cheerful wave that made my chest tighten with frustration. It felt wrong, sitting across from someone who had been systematically undermining me while pretending to be a friend. The cafe's hum of conversation faded into background noise as I studied her, noticing the subtle gestures I'd ignored before. The way she glanced at her phone when I mentioned upcoming projects, the faint smirk when a colleague passed by our table. Everything suddenly made sense, and the anger bubbled beneath my skin. I took a deep breath and slid the USB drive across the table. Her eyes widened slightly, the smile faltering for just a fraction of a second. "What's this?" she asked, in her carefully neutral tone. I leaned forward, voice firm but controlled. "I want an explanation. Every email, every copy draft, every meeting you've manipulated. Why, Laura? Why betray me like this?" For a moment, she stared at me blankly, as if she hadn't expected confrontation this early. Then she laughed nervously, a sound that made my stomach twist. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. I needed to get ahead. It wasn't personal." The casual tone, the shrug, it was infuriating. It was never personal. She'd spent months eroding my work, stealing credit, and framing me for mistakes I hadn't made. And now she was acting as if it were some minor lapse, some innocent mistake. "I trusted you," I snapped, my voice rising despite my attempt at calm. "I shared strategies, drafts, even personal advice about work stress, and you used it all to manipulate my career in your advantage. This wasn't just ambition, this was calculated, and you lied to my face the entire time." The words felt like a release, but also like pouring gasoline onto a fire. People at nearby tables were staring, and I didn't care. Every second I spent holding back now felt like collusion in her deception. She leaned back, her fingers drumming on the table, an attempt at composure that failed to hide the panic creeping into her eyes. "Look, I never wanted to hurt you. I had to survive here. You know how competitive this place is. I thought if I worked smart, kept you close, I'd be fine. I never thought it would get this out of hand." Her words, carefully chosen, sounded rehearsed, manipulative in themselves. I realized she wasn't apologizing, she was justifying, rationalizing her betrayal to preserve her image. I shook my head, disbelief mingling with fury. "You've been playing a game at my expense. A friendship at my expense. How long did you plan this? How many projects? How many meetings? How much of my work did you steal?" I had kept records, copies, emails. I knew the answer, and I wanted her to feel the weight of accountability. She hesitated, swallowing hard, eyes darting toward the exit, a brief moment of vulnerability. Months, maybe a year. I didn't know how to stop once I started. The admission hit me like a punch to the chest. A year. Every moment I'd shared strategies, every piece of advice I had given, every casual conversation about deadlines or creative ideas. It had all been part of her plan. I felt sick, the betrayal mingling with grief, disbelief, and rage. How could someone I considered a friend weaponize trust with such precision? I leaned closer, voice dropping to a near whisper, filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "You didn't just hurt me. You've jeopardized my career, my reputation. And worst of all, you made me doubt my own judgment for months. How am I supposed to move forward when the person I trusted most in this office has been working against me the whole time?" Laura's hands shook slightly, betraying the composed facade she tried to maintain. I don't know," she admitted softly. "I didn't think you'd find out. I thought I could handle it." Her gaze dropped, and for the first time I saw fear, genuine fear, not just the panic of being caught, but the understanding that she had finally revealed herself. We sat in silence for a long moment. The hum of the cafe felt deafening as I processed the full weight of her betrayal. I realized then that nothing she said could undo the months of manipulation, the stolen credit, or the trust she had shattered. The confrontation had revealed the truth, but it had also solidified a painful reality: our friendship, if it ever truly existed, was gone. I left the cafe that afternoon with the USB drive in my bag, not as proof for revenge, but as a reminder of what I had learned. I needed to protect myself now, professionally and personally. That meant documenting everything, informing supervisors if necessary, and, most importantly, reclaiming my own confidence and sense of judgment. The fallout had begun, and while part of me wanted to lash out, to publicly expose her deceit, another part, more measured, calmer, realized that the ultimate power lay not in retaliation, but in rising above. I couldn't undo the past, but I could control my next steps, and the choice now was mine: to crumble under betrayal or to rebuild, stronger, smarter, and more aware of who I allowed into my life. After the confrontation, I thought I might feel relief. I expected anger, yes, but also some satisfaction at finally having the truth in front of me. Instead, what I felt was a hollow, twisting pit in my stomach that refused to settle. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined. Laura's actions hadn't just undermined me, they had shaken my confidence, my judgment, and my sense of who I could trust in this office. Every email, every meeting, every casual suggestion I had offered suddenly felt like a potential weapon she could wield against me. I spent the next few days in a daze, carefully retracing my steps over the last year. I checked past emails, scanned shared files, and reviewed project timelines. The patterns were unmistakable. Laura had carefully orchestrated a web of subtle manipulations, claiming credit for ideas I had contributed, subtly planting doubt among colleagues about my competence, and even influencing decisions in ways that worked to her advantage. The most chilling part was realizing how natural it had all seemed. I had missed the cues, overlooked the inconsistencies, and allowed her to gain ground while believing she was a friend. I knew I had to act, but I didn't want my response to come from raw emotion. I began documenting everything: emails, messages, meeting notes, and project histories. Each piece of evidence became a shield, a way to protect myself from further manipulation. I also reached out to a few trusted colleagues, those who had worked closely with both of us. Carefully, I presented situations neutrally, without overt accusations, but enough to gauge if they had noticed anomalies. It was both terrifying and relieving to see that a few had indeed sensed subtle manipulations, but hadn't realized the full extent. Meanwhile, Laura continued as if nothing had happened, maintaining her charm, her jokes, and her ease in office interactions. I could see the tension behind her eyes occasionally, the slight hesitation when she knew I was observing. It was unnerving to realize that she might continue to manipulate others, possibly even attempting to rewrite the narrative to make me appear paranoid or unstable. I realized then that this wasn't just about our friendship. It was about reputation, power, and perception. I had to be meticulous if I wanted to preserve both my career and my sanity. The more I uncovered, the more I understood the scale of the betrayal. Laura's manipulation wasn't impulsive, it was strategic, almost predatory. She had cultivated a persona so perfect, so seemingly trustworthy, that it allowed her to operate unchecked for months. And yet, each revelation brought a strange clarity. I could see her patterns, anticipate her moves, and reclaim control of the narrative. The shock and pain of betrayal were still raw, but they no longer had the power to disorient me completely. I was regaining agency, slowly but surely. One evening, I received an unexpected message from HRA. They had noticed discrepancies in project credits and client communications, and they wanted to discuss recent team dynamics. I realized this might be my opportunity to ensure the truth came to light formally, in a controlled and professional way. I gathered my documentation, organized my notes, and prepared to present a factual, unemotional account of events. The goal was not revenge, it was protection, accountability, and transparency. If Laura had been operating this way with me, it was likely she had been doing it to others, and it was time for leadership to see the full picture. While preparing for the meeting, I also reflected on the personal toll. Betrayal by a friend, especially in a professional environment, leaves invisible scars. Trust becomes difficult, collaboration feels risky, and every interaction is tinted by caution. I realized that moving forward would require rebuilding, not just professional standing but my own confidence. I began to set boundaries, both emotional and practical, ensuring that I would not be vulnerable to manipulation again. It was painful, but necessary. When the day of the HR meeting arrived, I felt a mixture of nerves and determination. Presenting the facts calmly, objectively, and clearly, I watched as each document and example painted a clear picture of the extent of Laura's actions. HR listened, asked questions, and took notes meticulously. I left the meeting with a sense of relief, knowing that my truth was heard, and that accountability could finally follow. Laura, for the first time in months, seemed unsettled. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The knowledge that I had exposed the manipulation and reclaimed control was enough. Returning to my desk afterward, I felt a cautious optimism. The office, once a minefield of subtle threats, felt more manageable. I knew rebuilding trust would take time, but I also recognized my own resilience. Laura's betrayal had been devastating, but it had forced me to confront my own instincts, sharpen my awareness, and take control of my professional and personal life in a way I never had before. After the HR meeting, the atmosphere in the office shifted subtly but undeniably. Laura no longer carried the unshakable confidence she had flaunted, and though she tried to maintain appearances, the cracks in her facade were visible. I watched from my desk, feeling a mix of satisfaction and unease. Satisfaction because the truth was finally out and I had been vindicated. Unease because betrayal, once planted, leaves a lingering shadow. I knew it would take time before I felt completely safe to trust again. But for the first time in months, I felt the beginnings of peace. I focused on rebuilding my professional reputation first. I carefully documented projects, clarified contributions, and strengthened relationships with colleagues and clients. Each step felt deliberate, like repairing a bridge that had been partially destroyed. I realized that regaining trust wasn't just about proving myself to others. It was about proving to myself that I could navigate the world with integrity. Even when faced with calculated deception, each email I sent, each meeting I led, was a reaffirmation that I was still capable, competent, and resilient. Beyond the office, I began reclaiming my personal life. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, took up hobbies I had set aside, and allowed myself moments of quiet reflection without guilt or anxiety. It was strange to feel enjoyment again without a twinge of suspicion or fear. Slowly, I noticed a subtle shift in my mindset. I was no longer hyper-vigilant, no longer obsessing over potential manipulations. Instead, I felt empowered. I had survived one of the most insidious betrayals I had ever experienced, and I had emerged stronger and wiser. Laura, on the other hand, gradually became isolated. Her manipulations had alienated more people than she had realized. She continued to work in the office, but interactions that once flowed effortlessly became strained. I never sought revenge, never confronted her with triumph. I let the truth, the undeniable evidence, speak for itself. Watching her carefully, maintaining her distance, I realized that the power I had feared losing had always been within me. I simply had to reclaim it. Months passed, and life returned to a new normal. I no longer feared collaboration, I no longer doubted my judgment or instincts. I had learned to navigate office politics with caution, but without paranoia. Friendships became more intentional, professional alliances more thoughtful. The betrayal had forced me to develop discernment, emotional resilience, and an unshakable sense of self-worth. Every project I led, every decision I made, carried the quiet confidence that comes from surviving adversity. One day, I received an unexpected email from a client who had previously worked closely with both Laura and me. They wanted to commend the clarity, organization, and thoroughness of my work, noting that it had set a new standard for projects in our department. The message reminded me that despite the setbacks, the sabotage, and the lies, I was still recognized for my capabilities. It was a small victory, but in the aftermath of betrayal, even small victories felt monumental. Personally, I also started new connections, tentative friendships, and even casual mentorships, built on honesty and transparency. Each interaction, free from manipulation or deceit, was healing. I laughed more freely, shared ideas openly, and allowed myself to be vulnerable in ways I hadn't dared in months. The betrayal had left scars, yes, but it had also illuminated what I truly valued in people and in myself. I had been tested, and I had not broken. Looking back, I realized that the story wasn't about Laura's deceit. It was about my resilience, my ability to confront the truth, and my determination to reclaim control of my life. Betrayal had been a harsh teacher, but its lessons were invaluable. I learned that trust is precious, that boundaries are essential, and that self-worth cannot be dictated by anyone else's actions. The path forward was not perfect, but it was mine, filled with lessons, awareness, and hope. In the end, the office became more than a place of work. It became a testament to my survival, my growth, and my renewed ability to trust, cautiously but genuinely. I had faced manipulation, deception, and betrayal, and emerged intact. The scars remained, but they were marks of experience, not defeat. Life continued, vibrant and uncertain, but now I could meet it with clarity, confidence, and the quiet strength of someone who had weathered the storm and learned how to rise stronger than before.